What you're saying is that what happens when, if we understand European citizenship as enactments that is performatively brought into being, we also open it up for dominant forces to interpret it in particular ways. Then certain ways of enacting oneself as European become sedimented, and once it becomes sedimented, those who don't perform citizenship in those ways then can get excluded because it is so defined in terms of its performativity. I think it runs that risk, but before that runs that risk, actually it opens up a number of possibilities. I would say that the risk is the other way around. In the way in which European citizenship is already described now, especially with the dominance of European citizenship and its norms and understandings of what citizenship is, but also what the boundaries of citizenship are, who is excluded and who is included. In a way, European citizenship has already served to sediment European citizenship in a particular way, European Union. And understanding citizenship as enactment is unsettling that a little bit, disturbing that sedimented form of exclusion. How is not something that we answer theoretically, but the practical work we have done. For example, we looked at the Roma. I mentioned last week how significant it is to understand the Roma and Sinti people and their movements around Europe. And yet, within the framework of European citizenship, especially the laws passed by member states, how the Roma have been constituted as second-class citizens. Second class in the sense that despite the fact that in theory they have the same rights as any other European citizen, they have been, for example, deported. They have been, for example, disallowed to live in Berlin, in Paris, in Rome, and other European cities. So then the question becomes, well, if we have citizens who are not allowed to really perform their citizenship, despite the fact that when they have the legal status, should we not consider their movements, Roma movement, as one example of free movement and free mobility? So we turned it around and asked how Roma has been subjected or put into abject status by European Union laws, and how enacting their citizenship rights can be interpreted as opening that up. So that's one example of the kind of issue you're raising. But I say this also with the proviso that I agree with you that it does run that risk. But at the same time, that risk is not yet there in a way that enacting citizenship and understanding citizenship is not as dominant, and their particular groups have not yet taken hold of the content of European citizenship. So it's up for debate, and it's an open question at the moment. So it is this moment that we also think that it is important to think about citizenship in this sort of open way, rather than already accepting or thinking that we know what it is. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You were asking if I could just, I'm just reading now from your blog. You use interesting term called failed performances of citizenship. And that's really, really helpful, because when we shift the debate from failed status to failed performance, we actually politicize what it means to be a European citizen. And that's a good thing. And I'll tell you what I mean by politicizing European citizenship being a good thing. When it is just merely defined as status or legal entitlement, European citizenship, then it is interpreted to be a matter merely for courts, police, and other authorities to define who is a citizen and who is not. So it is constituted as a technical, legal matter. And this is something that we worry about, because increasingly police and other authorities become arbiters of who is a European citizen and who isn't. So that decision making takes place more or less outside the public purview and public debate. But when we think about the way you describe, for example, failed or successful performances, who defines what is a successful or failed performance of European citizenship is an open question. And more importantly, it's a political question. It's not a technical question. Because it is a political question, it can be discussed openly, democratically, in public view, and we can have agreements and disagreements. And we think that that's actually a better way of approaching European citizenship rather than interpreting as a technical issue.